What is up? This is your LA in a minute, and today is the 30-year anniversary of one of the most infamous and unfortunate incidents in Los Angeles history, the 1992 LA riots, where a series of riots and civil disturbances ensued after a jury acquitted 4 police officers of using excessive force after the videotape beating of Rodney King. Let's get into the details. Prior to the release of the Rodney King tape, minority community leaders in LA had repeatedly complained about harassment and excessive force against their residents by LAPD officers. Daryl Gates, who was the chief of the LAPD from 1978 to 1992, was blamed for much of the riots and most of the violence. According to one study, scandalous racist violence marked the LAPD under Gates' tempestuous leadership. Prior to the riots, there was growing resentment and violence between the African American and Korean American communities. This was highlighted in Spike Lee's seminal film, Do the Right Thing. Many Korean shopkeepers at the time were upset because they suspected shoplifting from their black customers and neighbors, but many black customers were angry because they routinely felt disrespected and humiliated by the store owners. In March of 1991, a year before the LA riots, storekeeper Soon Ja-do shot and killed black 9th grader Latasha Harlins after a physical altercation. Do was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, and the jury recommended the maximum sentence of 16 years, but the judge decided against prison time and sentenced her instead to 5 years of probation and 400 hours of community service. Relations between the two communities continued to worsen. March 3rd, 1991, Rodney King and 2 passengers were driving west on the 210 in the San Fernando Valley. A high-speed chase ensued, and King finally exited on Foothill Boulevard in Lakeview Terrace. When they pulled him out of the car, a beating ensued. None of the officers were black, but they tased him, beat him, kick-stomped him, and then finally handcuffed him and hogtied him. Unbeknownst to the police and Rodney King, the incident was captured on a camcorder by civilian George Holliday. The LAPD subsequently charged the 4 officers, including 1 sergeant, with assault and use of excessive force. The trial was moved from LA to Ventura County, where the jury, with no completely black members, acquitted the 4 officers after 7 days of deliberations on April 29th. The riots began almost immediately, and they peaked in intensity over the next 2 days. A curfew was enforced, and deployment by the California National Guard and federal law enforcement and U.S. troops ensued. Though the riots started in South Central, much of the rioting targeted stores owned by Koreans, reflecting the tensions between them and the African American communities. In total, 64 people died, and there was $1 billion worth of damage. The rioting finally simmered down on May 1st when Rodney King gave his famous "Can't we all just get along" speech. Daryl Gates announced his resignation during the riots. Hard to believe it's been 30 years since this low point in LA's history, but let's keep working together and get along. All right, LA, it's been a